Here we go. So, welcome to Lead Stronger Longer. This is the podcast that empowers you to purposefully lead your life personally and professionally. My guest today is Lynne Marlor. She's the co-founder of Women in Digital Assets Forum. She is dedicated to helping women and their allies succeed in fintech and digital assets. And with a strong global financial network, Lynne brings a growth mindset to every project. Previously, she was a managing director at the Bank of New York Mellon. Lynne's expertise has led to nominations as an Unstoppable Woman of Web3, roles as a judge for the Banking Innovation Awards, and she is a respected speaker and investor in blockchain, fintech, and digital assets. Lynne embraced blockchain in 2018 through the Oxford Blockchain Strategy Program at Oxford University. We'll learn more about that. So welcome, Lynne. Let's start off with your favorite quote or mantra. What gets you through the day?
My mantra is come curious and leave inspired.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's just take that for a moment. Come curious, leave inspired. So, how does that drive you personally or professionally?
So, at this point in time, right, I'm very involved in digital assets, obviously. And I think that the world, in order to really be a human being living in society, we can all sit back and say, well, it doesn't apply to me. I don't want to learn this. But we have to be curious about the world around us, whether, that's hunger, whether that's, AI, whether that's digital assets. And my mantra is part of the mission that I have for women in digital assets. And that is, look, I don't expect you to get a PhD in digital assets or blockchain, or it doesn't, but, be curious about a technology that literally is going to change your life. It will be a tectonic shift in everything that we do. And frankly, I want to understand it. So if you're curious about something and it piques your curiosity, then you will, be inspired to learn more. Whether it's your health or whatever it might be, it really, I think, behooves each of us to embrace something. And my other mantra, I guess I would say, is I often say to folks, look, I'm not going to come knock on your door and say, Stefana, you should learn about this technology. I'm not going to do that. But if you knock on my door, I'm going to put my hand out and help you, because that's what this is. It's a collaboration effort. And I think it's important that we understand what we didn't understand in Facebook. And that is that if I liked your shirt or your earrings, I got 25 ads for those. I didn't understand that. I don't know if other people do. I want to understand how my digital identity, my digital money, and digital objects will be used. I want to know that. I want to understand it. And I think, so that drives me every day.
That's incredible. Oh, I'm so for that. Yes, yes, yes. We need to understand, and staying curious is how we can stop being a victim to what's going on and be interested. And thank you. That is genius. Okay. So what led to your specialization?
Well, I've always, my father was an entrepreneur. I've always been super interested in business. I mean, my dad took us to work on Saturdays. So, I always had this business mindset, I guess. Went to business school. I went to business school. I went to undergrad in business. Most people don't do that today. I was fortunate to get into a scholars program at one of the big banks, which really was a very, very fulsome understanding of all financial structures. Spent 30 years doing, a job I absolutely loved. One day, as a group head at Bank of New York Mellon, my boss came to me and said, I want you to go to this meeting with Ripple. Now, Ripple is huge in the digital asset space and blockchain, et cetera. Went to the meeting, did not know what they were talking about. But in my mind, I said, if this is true, what they can do, shrink the time for transactions, create a digital way to move these things around, which are very complicated in any event, and reduce the time, et cetera. This could be fascinating. So I asked my boss, look, I need to take a class. I don't understand what they're talking about. He agreed, took the class. That was the Oxford Blockchain Strategy class. Came back from that, got so excited about the technology and what it will do. And the humanistic approach of it as well. It opens up, there are, 2 billion unbanked people, and then there are 4 billion underbanked people. And this could change all of that. So, I felt that I really, at that point, when I got back from that course in 2018, I felt like I wasn't really connecting with the mission of the financial institution I worked for. I wasn't really looking for a job, but I started embracing the technology, was approached by a serial entrepreneur to start a company. And unfortunately, with COVID, it fell apart. But I really embraced the technology and loved it and am fascinated by it. So I joined Boston Blockchain, became the chair of that. I relinquished my role after 3 years in September. Also was approached by a serial entrepreneur to start Women in Digital Assets. And so that's really been my mission for the last, I don't know, 15 months or so. And I think what led me to really go in this place is I saw the opportunity. It's building a new infrastructure. And having spent my career in banking, I realized that there are so many points where, for example, companies can't get a bank account or an individual, right? Because you don't have the money to do that. So then you're in this situation where you have to pay a lot more than if you could get a bank account, right? Or it could be even any transactions. Everything is so scrutinized. So what led me to this is I saw the efficiencies, the reduction in time, the ability for anybody to have a bank account. Doesn't matter that you don't have a legal address in the United States or something like that. It really can open up through fractionalization, an opportunity for many people to embrace products that were exclusively reserved for the wealthy, right? And getting a home. How do you create wealth? That's homes, right? Owning a home is really the fundamental piece of wealth creation. I saw all that come together with this technology. And so that's really what led me here. And the idea that we could actually, we're building it. We're building the language of it. We're building the terminology. We're building the protocols, the procedures. It's fascinating. So.
Yeah, I can imagine just going there. I have so many questions that are sparking off, but I'm going to stay on target here because that's definitely a multiple rabbit hole, especially because I just read Creature from Jekyll Island and understanding what the Fed is, and then understanding, that's a whole, and talk about fractional lending. And then it's like, oh man, okay, but I'm gonna stay with what I really want to focus on with you and go through this story. So we've heard your journey. I love that you started with your dad. And I mean, that to me, that's heartwarming because I'm very, very similar in that I spent time working with my dad and my mom and their entrepreneur spirit and contributing in these ways. And you just have a different mindset, right? You're involved, you're integrated. So what would you say is a crucial early mistake, maybe a pitfall or something, a key challenge that you faced, and how did you learn from that?
That's a really fabulous question. And, I would say I've turned it into my mission now. And I think the thing that really hindered me early in my career, I was a very shy child, hard to imagine today, but I really was. And I think I, got into this program with a bank, this scholars program, which was, incredibly like prestigious. And, I mean, they trained you for 2 years without really producing any revenue. No bank does that anymore today. And so I guess the thing that got me most, and the thing that my mistake was, I didn't trust myself. I had sort of imposter syndrome. What the hell am I doing here? These people are so much smarter than I am. And, I'm not good enough. And all of that. I mean, I truly felt that way. And I remember, after about 18 months in the program, and one of the leaders of the program came up to me and said, the presentation that you did, and these were small groups, the presentation you did, and frankly, there were 4 people to a group, and only 2 of us did actually any work. It was me and one other guy, and the leader of one of the groups came up and said, we had an audience when we had our final pitch, if you will. And she said, your presentation was the best by far of anybody. Now, I would tell you that, I probably didn't test, you had to be tested every week on stuff. I probably didn't test the best, but my presentation was the best. And, that sort of started to drive me, well, okay. And through the years, I started to really embrace that and say, you know what, I should ask the question. I should speak up. I mean, I know a lot more than half of these people in the room. And it was my own fear. And so at some point, it was maybe 15, 18 years ago, I finally, I wasn't doing any speaking at all. I was doing my job, right? And I had kids and, the whole 9 yards. And I finally said, I got to get out there and speak, because people respect you, whether you're, the actual expert or not. It does something. It creates the idea that you are an expert, that you have an accomplishment, you have a contribution to this thing. And so I made a pact with my boss at the time. I said, I'm going to start speaking at like these conferences. And I said, I want that on my goals for the year. And I think he looked at me like, oh God, not going to happen. And I did it. And yeah, the first one is not easy. The second one's not as easy. They just get easier, right? And now, I mean, I've been speaking about blockchain since 2018. And so I'm just kind of done with, women who, I want every woman on stage. Because if you're not the one who carries that message, it gets associated with somebody else. And I think we all need to embrace the fact that I don't have all the answers. That's one of the things I love about this technology. No one does. We're building it. So I'm as good as an expert as the next person. I'm not a programmer, but I've had a career in fintech for 30 something years. And so I think it's, celebrating, contributing, acknowledging that, yeah, we've accomplished something, or whoever you are, you've accomplished something. And then I think the other is supporting women, creating networks where my mantra is, call a woman first, right? In this space. Just call a woman. Maybe she's a lawyer. Maybe it's a smart contract provider. Maybe it's an audit firm that audits smart contracts. Maybe it's a platform or a protocol or whatever. If I need help in that space, call a woman first. I want to create a network where you say, you know what? I know somebody. I met that woman at that event. She's doing this, and that's what I need. I'm going to call her first. I think, so.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so I saw a few really key things here. First, you definitely embraced your fear, but you stayed curious even about your own fear, which is huge. I think this is really important, as opposed to letting it sabotage you and then just hold you back. So the second thing I heard is, once you observed that you did take an acknowledgement, and it seemed like you took some time to actually even process it, so that, wait a minute, I can speak, I can do this. Oh, let me see. And then you made a goal. And you stuck with it, even when someone didn't necessarily, oh yeah, sure, believe in you, right? So these are the key little nuggets. They may seem mundane, but these are key. These stepping stones that you just painted for us is like so beautiful. And when you said, call a woman first, all these little confetti came down on your screen. I was like, I wonder if you have it set up magically that call a woman first, and that celebrates this little confetti thing. I was like, oh, that's so cool. I love it. I love it.
Well,
And I
thank you.
think that that's what it's about, is knowledge sharing.
Yeah.
And that we each have our own unique voice. And when we do share it, that it just expands and we expand. So I love that. Okay. Advice for leaders to
Yeah.
lead stronger, longer, whether they're up and coming leaders, or, they've been leading for 40 years. Advice.
I think the real advice is, you know, step up. I think there was, as part of that journey where I'm going to go speak, right? I also sort of put myself out there, listen, I appreciate, women's role, whether we think there's been a transformation, most in my case, right? I did, most of the stuff for the house, and managing that process, maybe not, doing it, but managing it, and had a job, and I traveled, frequently. I think the thing is, you just have to step up. You just have to, as Nike says, like, just do it, like, we create these, well, I don't have that thing, or, I'm not a good speaker, or I don't know how to lead a not-for-profit. I took the bull by the horns and actually started speaking, then became the chair of a financial organization at the time in New England. And then it just kind of mushroomed from there. And I think I just stepped up and I said, you know what, I'm just gonna give it a shot, right? And if everything, then I'll just quit. Like, I'm not a quitter, but it was like, don't get all hung up. Just do it. Just do it. And you'll figure out a way to make it work. And you do. And most of organizations that I belong to, it's not one person doing all of the work, right? So it is a group effort. And I think that's it. As a leader, you just have to basically step to the plate and say, I'm going to give this my best shot. And stuff happens. And sometimes I may not be able to fulfill it. And I think in most cases, you just make it happen. And so I think that's the advice, is get up there, step up, get a little out of your comfort zone. Doesn't mean you have to, be the president of this or that, but, step up, get on that committee, right? And what I've learned by doing that is there are so many incredibly welcoming people that are willing to teach you something that maybe you didn't know or never even thought of. And, when you get involved, I was at a conference, Money 2020 last November, and I was speaking with a small panel, and there were three of us, two women and a guy, and I won't mention his name, but we spent almost the weekend together because we're at this conference and we're speaking, and we would have dinner together and prep. And at the end of the weekend, this guy said, I'm going to miss you, lady. Like, this conversation was, I can't have this at home with anybody, and we really, all of us dug deep and we asked, like, we weren't afraid because we were like fans, like, wait a minute, wait. I don't get that. You're saying, we really dug into the details. And this guy's very bright. We all came away like, wow, that was just such a experiential weekend. Like, we just learned so much from each other. And, I still, like, I have this conversation with this guy going now all the time, right? I call him, I say, hey, I got a question I want to ask you. And I have no fear, right? He's my buddy and he will ask me questions. So that's, that kind of learning for me, you can't get from a textbook, right?
100%. Yeah. And it's interesting, it's, for me, I see it's not necessarily even men or women unless you already have a stigma, but it's what you created together. There was synergy. And that is what the gift of genuine collaboration is. And I love that so much. It goes right in with your mantra of stay curious and leave inspired, because that's what you're doing for us today. Thank you so much. Do you have a go-to book that you would recommend?
It's funny you asked that. I have so many go-to books. I think one of the, I am a very large believer in, helping people, right? But also, I think embracing, the positiveness of life, right? The curiosity. And, so I have a ton of books that I love. I will say that those that have really, and I will say one of the things, maybe stepping back as what is a leader, we have all, I certainly have had times in my life where I felt like I was beaten down, right? And something didn't work out. And, it's the ability to get up again and say, okay, I'm going to wipe off that fall and I'm going to get up and do it again. And, I think that, taking risks, falling are great lessons. So some of the, I love some of the motivational people like Anthony Robbins. I love Chet Holmes. I don't know if he's got a book about sales. To me, everything is, and I don't want this to sound, selling. You are always selling yourself. What I've told my kids, people are always looking at you in terms of selling you for something. And I don't mean, I'm pushing a product on you. That isn't what I mean. It's, if you don't have it in yourself to go forward and to ask the question, or to say, hey, Stefan, do you know somebody who might be able to help me if I'm looking for a job? Or, hey, I would love to speak on this panel. Or, it's sort of an extension of that curiosity. Ask for it. I can't even tell you the number of times, I remember when I was switching jobs at one point, I asked for a salary that was sort of out of my wheelhouse in a sense. And I got the job. And one of the bosses came to me and, basically said, well, I don't know how, but, you make more money than I do. And I felt like saying, well, I said, well, that's not my problem. Yeah, so what? I asked for it. Right. And that's, I think there is a very good book. It's a very old book and it's called Ask for It. And it's asking for what you believe that you need. And sometimes we need a little push to do that. I know my husband's very good at saying, wait a minute, if you're going to go here and do that, you better get more money, And I think women don't, we're always like, well, I don't have that skill. And I don't, why would they pay me that? Got to get that mindset out. And I think those are the things that so I don't have one book. I just think staying motivated, staying, excited and curious, those are really, to me, that's the go-to. That's the keeping myself, positive all the time, as much as possible. And, life can throw you some curves, but
yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. But that book, even, I can't wait to go get that one. Sometimes we hold ourselves back because we don't ask. That's so true.
Yeah. And that book is very old. I mean, I have it on my bookshelf, but honestly, it's pretty old. And it takes you through some lessons of asking, always ask for something high, right? And assume they're going to come down, I mean, so anyway, those are the things that I look at that have helped me, because honestly, I wouldn't say it's imposter syndrome. It's just like, I never, you always never feel, am I really good enough to get that, to do
Well,
this?
it's a skill that we haven't been taught. I mean, ask for it, right? Right. Where it's like we haven't got that skill. It's more like, well, are they going to give it to me? And then, yes, they're going to give it to me, but it's really low on the bar. But asking for it way up here, then there's that imposter syndrome, which is that phrase that gets said of, it's basically the skill that you haven't developed, folks, right? You developed that. You developed it by going and speaking on one stage, then two, then three, and then you got better. And that's the process that we've forgotten. So I love what you are sharing. How can folks get a hold of you? What's the best way? Because you're so generous in mentoring and giving. And if someone wants to ask to mentor or work with you, what would be the best way for them to reach you?
I was part of a program that was started at Cambridge University at the Judge Business School. It was called Enterprise Women. I was one of the senior advisors, and I did do some free mentoring. I still work with like 5 of those women today. In fact, one of them is partnering with Women in Digital Assets, and they are going to be doing blockchain boot camps and a blockchain program that we're going to offer on our website. Our website right now is not in great shape. We are redoing the whole thing. So if you go there, it's not great, but it will be. And we're having a program that starts out at $99. You're not going to have a PhD in blockchain, but you are going to understand some of the terminology and what is important about the technology that you can take back, right? Trust, immutability, those are the things, and provenance of something. Those are the things that are really critical to kind of understand what those mean and how they impact you. So we're going to have all that. So 2 ways to reach me. One is Lynne Marlor, LYNNE @gmail.com, or Lynne, LYNNE @WIDAF, WIDAF.co. And that is our website, widaf.co. Now, as I said, I just looked at it this morning. It's in a disaster shape. It's all being redone. It won't be ready till probably the end of the first quarter, but we'll have an education program on there. Literally, it's like $100, and you'll at least understand the terminology and what it means. And reach out to me. I'm always I'm also on LinkedIn. I try to talk to everybody, and you never know where your next opportunity is coming from. But I do think it's important to give back, and that's where I am in my life. This is a passion play. I do this because I love it, and I want other people to love it in a sense, right? Or to be curious and get inspired to learn more.
Yeah, I am so curious, so excited. I think it's so important what you're doing, and I am so grateful for your time. This has been amazing. I know we're
Thank
right at
you.
that time, so I will
Yep.
say I want to have you back. Maybe we can dive a little bit deeper in a couple of other topics, but thank you, thank you. So we'll leave you with this amazing quote from Lynne, or her mantra, stay curious and
Come curious and leave inspired.
come curious, stay curious, and then leave inspired. Oh, love it. Love it so much.
We
Thank you.
have events that is our mantra. So our events,
Oh,
if you go
cool.
to our website, you'll see them, but we also, we have events around the globe. So we do 3 events, Stamford, Connecticut, London, and Singapore. We may be doing Hong Kong. I just had a call last night. So we'll see.
So
But we're doing,
excited. Maybe
yep,
that's your book title too. I think it would be awesome.
we'll see.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much.
All
Appreciate
right.
it. And Steph, give me a call. I'd love to follow up.
Absolutely. Thank you
All right.
so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.